Hello everyone, welcome back to another tutorial by EClip. This time I'm going to show you what is my approach in bringing the life into the track. So after building the drum stems ready and doing some of the hardest sound design, we finished that kind of process, and now it's time for more creative part. And I will show you my approach in how do I build the atmosphere sounds and how do I give a life to a track, how do you build all those things to give kind of the character to a track, and which will lead later on how the track will go further on. So let's jump on the project. So here we are in the project which I built already. So we finished kick, bass, drums and everything else. And I did few sounds I was dropping here because for me it's really hard to work on a sound design, because you probably know the feeling when you're stuck into the loop and you're just doing a sound design, adjusting the delay, reverb and other effects. I chose to show you this way because it's much easier for me to show you when something is already ready, and that way I can only explain what was going on there instead of building and doing from the scratch, because that way I'm not sure I could show you the best possible results. So I have something that I was working lately on this project, which I have already something inside, so I'll just play you so you have an idea what we are gonna talk about.
Mushroom. And the question is, what dosage do I need to take mushroom heavy in order to alleviate anxiety and the symptoms?
So that is a kind of a sketch which I did already, and basically what you can see here, those orange ones, as I will explain you again, I always play those single shot sounds, for example as this one or this one and this one. There's like 14 single shot sounds that are going with a lot of reverb and a delay. So this is my idea how progressive Psytrance should sound, because progressive, Psytrance, we have three terms. Maybe this is a little bit theoretical, but this is how I was researching what all those terms are actually meaning. So I did kind of research when I was younger, because when you call something progressive, Psytrance, I wanted to know what all of those terms mean, as I wanted to throw the dart straight in the center. So first we have a progressive. For me, progressive, it means like a slow development, something with a progression. That means that it will need a time and it will not change a lot. It will build one story slowly through the time. And then we have a psychedelic. When I used to listen Pink Floyd or psychedelic rock, and then I started listening psychedelic trance. So I was trying to find what is similar in those two genres. And the only thing I could find, every psychedelic from the past, every genre that have a psychedelic in its genre name, they used a lot of reverb and a delay, which is kind of making this liquidish effect in the music. And then we have a trance on the end, and people in the past using shamanic rituals and other spiritual rituals. They use the same constant rhythms, which help them to get into the trance state of mind. So this is why I believe that Psytrance should have the same rhythm, which some people find kind of boring, but I will show you how you can make this more interesting and more groovy. Most of the people find the psychedelic kind of the more twisted sounds, more synthetic. I totally believe differently, that psychedelic actually, it just gives kind of the atmosphere, and I like to use more organic sounds, percussions, even if it's a distorted sounds, with a lot of reverb and delay, and all these tails, as you can see, all of those single shots, they have a kind of long tails with a reverb and a different delay settings, different reverb settings, sometimes with the filters going on. There's a lot of movement going into the background of the track, and this is for me the main thing why it's kind of psychedelic. And I will play you only those single shot sounds, and you will realize how they communicate between each other and what is the atmosphere they are building in the background of a track. There's a story about the sources, about all those single shot sounds that I played you, and I always try to use kind of different sources. I use a lot of samples, because when you sample something and then you pitch it down and do some processing, it just sounds differently. Sometimes it loses the quality, but it has its own magic, and this is this kind of organic. For example, if you listen to a Prodigy music from 90s, they sampled almost everything. So imagine now that you have a, I don't know, let's say Michael Jackson or Led Zeppelin. They used many different kind of microphones, many different kind of preamps, many different kind of mixers, EQs, and so on. And when you take that sample, it already has the richness of all the gear that they used while recording all of those. And then we have this kind of digital sounds with a lot of distortion, like synths and VSTs. And I believe the combination of all those is actually what is giving the richness inside of this kind of music. And I always try to use different sources. So for example, if you see here, we have first is like a VPerc. Actually, it's a shortcut for world percussion. And this one is actually not synced, and I didn't want it to be synced because it kind of gives the human feeling inside the music. While we have, for example, something that is kind of lighter, which is kind of up there in the higher tones, which has a kind of musicality inside, and which gives enough tones not to be boring, because Psytrance, for me, this is my personal taste, but it became a little bit too much of FM synthesis, a lot of like just randomly stuff inside there, and I believe that it miss from the past kind of some organic textures inside to give the richness to the tracks. And if you listen, for example, the Asterix music, he always has the organic samples inside, the vocal, the speeches, some kind of violins, some kind of organic sounds. And this is for me the richness that we can get from Psytrance music as well. Is a kind of a combination. It's in a between of digital and analog. And you don't need to be a player or something. You can just find the sample packs or even splices full of them. And it is becoming more popular again. And I'm really happy because of it. Because without these organic sounds, it just sounds a little bit dull. This is my personal taste, but this is what I believe in and what I want to try to affect all of you to make this kind of music, which kind of gives a great atmosphere in a combination of a digital and analog, and that gives a kind of combination of a dark and a light. And for me, this is a philosophy that I always want to bring in each track, is kind of to have a really good groove and then to have a shifts of the night sounds and shifts of the light sounds. And it's kind of creating of a yin-yang effect. We need to cover all of the aspects of the music if we want to bring something that will stay longer, because everything else will be forgotten really fast. And this is my approach, and this is how I believe, and this is what I can teach you the best. So after building a template, as I said already, so kick and bass and rest of the drums, which sounds really good, and I separate this process from the creative process. Basically in this process I'm just doing sound design. When you start dropping other sounds, you will need to correct it because it will not sound the same. But basically when you have it ready, and if you have a track that sounds already good, something from your previous tracks, just export those stems and keep them in one folder. And then when you start next track, you can drop in, you can change the bass, you can change the hi-hat, you can change this one, you can cover up with the different loops, percussive loops and so on, but you will have an amazing start point. I advise you to separate when the creative part is not going good. Just work on your kick, bass and the rest of the drums and try to save them as a template, because when you get into the creative mood and when you have an inspiration, you can be much faster. You can just drag and drop. As I showed you already, here I have the template that I released, and I just need to go inside, choose the desired BPM and just drop all of those stems inside, and I can be straight away creative, and I can start be creative straight away. After you have that done, I go just one by one. I always have few different VSTs opened. Is it a serum if I want something digital to drop in, as for example this sound over here. Then I have something with a good chords. This is from Electra, as you can see. And then you just drop those sounds, and when you make kind of 10 of them, the next part is actually positioning. My approach to positioning all of those sounds, I always try to put different kinds next after each other. So after this one here, so we have a world percussion here, then we have another kind of percussion. This is more like a short uplifter. And then we have a chord, which is kind of covering the musical part and covers the musicality inside. Then we have another percussion on a reverb and a delay. Then we have this distorted sound, and then we have another chord. And this one here, it's kind of atmospheric percussional sound. Usually, if it's a dark sound, the next one will not be dark. It will be or a percussive or a light one. And this is kind of a combination where you can make the track to sound interesting. And I didn't realize this, and I was doing all of this without this theory in my mind. But then when I opened like some of my old projects and I tried to analyze, for example, Salvia Divinorum, I realized that every next sound is a kind of with a different character and a different type of a sound. You can bring inside this like some kind of instrument with a short, like 2 or 3 tones, like a flute or something else, or a vocal sample or some singing or whatever you want. But that doesn't mean that all of those positions will stay the same, because after I built this part, I went into building the intro, and then I built this intro with the chord melody, sitar and chord. As you could see from this position, it always go on a first kick, like every 2, every 4 bars it will go the next sound. But then I have this one here going on the same position. So building an intro, I left this one on the same position as they were, but then I moved all the sounds to go after. So I left the chord to be heard. So the positioning here is a bit different because we have another element that is also musical, this chord. When it hits in, I didn't want to cover it up with anything else, but basically on a default it used to be like this. And then we have like a chord and this chord going in the same time, and then we miss something here. So also pay attention about that. And after that, what also I do when bringing the life to the track with on the template is when we have those single shots, I always try to bring those blue ones. They are always kind of sequences, kind of plucks or some stabs, and they are the magic inside this music, because we have the same bass line going like constantly around, and it can bother people after some amount of time. It is good to listen only the kick and bass for, let's say, 30 seconds or a minute, depends from a taste from a listener. So I bring some kind of small stabs which are kind of also in a low end, and they actually interfere with the bass line, and they give this rhythmical kind of the groove getting more interesting with this. This is in every progressive kind of music. In progressive house you will hear that as well, that they have a bass line one, then they have like a small note. They just make this groove a little bit interesting. And after this I will probably add more sequences, or I will add more interesting samples inside, maybe a vocal sample or something, or I will build a bass line that kind of have a different tones to bring it more interesting. But basically, as you can see, my idea is that you bring everything slowly. So not to start, for example, dry kick and bass are really powerful and people really loves them. So I believe that from this point here, you should leave it dry and just let the kick and bass roll in. But you should develop an ability to realize when it's gonna be a little bit boring. So for example, if I leave this only kick and bass, and then here maybe I just add a hi-hat, but if I add a hi-hat only, I need to bring more of those interesting sounds. There's always needs to be something that keeps the attention of the listener. So I left only 16 bars here with kick and bass dry, and then it comes with the claps, closed hi-hat and some loop, as well as some of the rhythmical parts that gonna make the groove a little bit more interesting. The main idea is to get this ability of listening, that you are able to realize when and what to put there, and this you can only get by listening and listening and listening. It's a kind of a practice, but when you get this, you are gonna be much faster, and then you can just enjoy in being creative and writing and so on. You can export this part and you can separate 1 hour on just building a melody without messing up in a project. Maybe you can take your mix down and then you can try on that mix down just to work on a melody without possibility to touch any other channel or whatsoever. This is kind of a things that you need to learn and to organize yourself. Also organizing your sample folders, and if you have an ability to know where each sound is, if you are looking for something organic, you know where to go. These kind of things can help you to be creative. But as I told you, it is a preparation thing. Separate your sound design moments from mixing moments, from mastering, from arranging. If you have a sound design, you do your kick and bass or whatsoever, even it sounds tight, you can separate that from just dropping a lot of different single shot sounds, but you should have different kinds, let's say organic sounds, distorted sounds, gated sounds, glides, digital sounds or whatsoever, and try to bring them in few different octaves. Fill in that folder from that track, and then when you have kick and bass ready, they're already going, you can just drop in the sounds and separate. These processes will help you a lot. So this was the tutorial about how to bring life into the track, and I hope that you like it. And it's already too long, so I hope that you like it. And I want to announce that I'm preparing myself for a Psychedelic Tips World 2. In the last 8 months I spent a lot of time in sound design, mixing, arranging, especially after I upgraded to SM9. I spent a lot of time in researching, and I went really straight to the beginning from kick and bass, and I believe that I have plenty of new things to show you. And this course will be a little bit different. It will be filled up with presets and samples that I will make during this course, and that way you can recheck, are you doing everything right, and so on. So I'm trying to build something more dynamic. So that was it for this tutorial, and see you next week with another one. And I hope that you like it. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and I wish you the best of the luck, and continue writing me the ideas for the new tutorials, and see you soon. Bye.